Welcome to the CDRB Show, the podcast where you get to know some of the coolest people around. I'm your host, Christian Rodriguez, and each week I sit down with a special guest to chat about their life, career, and all the things that make them awesome. We cover some serious topics that matter, but don't worry, we keep it real and laid back. You never know what kind of insights and surprises you'll get, but one thing's for sure, we're always having a good time. So kick back, relax, and join us for another episode of the CDRB Show. Hello everyone and welcome to a new episode of the CDRB Show. I'm Christian Rodriguez, and as every week, we have a special guest to talk about their life and career. This week's guest is Mr. Adam Morgan. He's a politician serving as member of the South Carolina House of Representatives and also president of Majesty Music. How are you?
Good. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you for being here. Today it's a very different podcast for me because it's the first time that I am recording outside of the studio that I'm used to do it. And
you're in Majesty Music
yeah,
Studio
that's great. I didn't know that you had all these set up for podcasts as well.
Yeah.
And that was so convenient for me.
It is super convenient. Yeah.
Yeah. So thank you for being here today. What I want to do with every guest in my podcast is to try to talk about their personal life, but also to talk about their professional career, accomplishments, and everything. And I think with you, it will be a really interesting conversation.
It may be short if it's accomplishments. I'm like 30, early 30s. You can't have done very much by then, right?
So the first question is, where were you born?
So I was born in Dallas, Texas, and lived there for like 7.5 years, then lived in Atlanta for a while, and then ultimately moved here to Greenville, South Carolina. And I've spent like 20 years here now, which is crazy.
20 years?
Doesn't seem like I'm that old. Yeah.
How old are you?
33.
33?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So I could still consider myself young. I feel young. I have 2 kids and one on the way. So like anytime you have babies in your life, like you are young.
Wow, yeah.
But once they get into like elementary and high school, that's when you're old.
You could be my brother.
There you go. Exactly.
My brother is 32.
There you go.
Actually.
Literally. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wait. How old are you?
I'm 22.
22. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, there you go. A little bit of a gap, but.
Okay. So how was your life like when you were like a child?
My dad was in business, and we traveled a lot because of that. We would kind of all go as a family. So I was homeschooled at first, which was a different experience for sure than probably a lot of people have. And I was actually, as a young kid, I was supposed to go to school, or I was like interviewing or whatever that is called to get a place in the school. And they did some kind of a test or something, and the teacher was like, "Oh, I think he might have attention deficit disorder or some kind of ADHD. So I think we need to hold him back a year." And my mom was like, "I just really don't know about that. I think he's just a boy with a lot of energy, and I think he just needs more one-on-one time. He's actually, pretty good with school and stuff like that." And so she actually, instead of having me wait a year, she just started homeschooling. So that's kind of the reason I got into homeschooling. So. Did that a lot, and I feel like I learned a lot more than I would have in school by being homeschooled, because it was kind of go at your own pace, and my mom had a teaching background. So by the time I went back into school as I think it was in 6th grade or something, I went back in and I was actually top of my class, which is kind of ironic, from being, he needs to be held back. And she said, no, we'll do our own thing. And then going back and I've always, loved academics since then. So anyway, kind of an interesting pathway. But ultimately, I went to a regular school. I've done kind of every different type of schooling. I did homeschool, I did Christian school, and then did law school, so public law school. I've had an interesting educational background.
Yeah. Do you think, I always have wondered about this with homeschooling, do you think that can be a disadvantage in terms of social skills maybe, because you're not around other people all the time. Maybe.
Hugely. I'm weird, and I really struggle to talk to people. No, I'm just kidding. That's not true. I am weird, but I think it depends on your family dynamic. You know, everybody. If you're in a family where the parents maybe are very, I don't want to say antisocial, but that's the word that's coming to mind. If they're antisocial, they don't, you know, interact a lot or communicate a lot, or you know, they're not as social and aren't involved in social things around the family, like, you know, sports and church and, you know, whatever community involvement. My family, my parents are both very social, and we were very involved in those kind of extra familial, extracurricular things. And so it didn't stymie my, you know, social growth or whatever, however you want to phrase that. And I don't think it did either of my siblings either. My brother is also in politics, and literally politics is a social world. I mean, it's really, I think it's easy to oversimplify, but it's all relationship based. It's all in communication. It's inspiring people at, you know, sales in a lot of ways, get them to vote for you, and then get people that you work with that are other representatives to vote for legislation you're pushing. So it's heavily leaning on social skills. So my brother is in the house with me. We're both in politics, and my sister runs a sales company. So everything we do is very social. So I would say the exact opposite. I do see that stereotype some in, you know, in homeschool families, but I think it's definitely an overhyped stereotype, because a lot of times, you know, when I meet homeschool families and homeschool people that had that background, they don't seem to struggle socially. I think there's maybe it's a time. Maybe it's like when you make that first transition from the homeschool environment to like a workplace or a public or a private schooling option. Maybe that's where you first have that kind of tension, and then pretty quickly you learn the skills. That's what I see. I don't think of it as a really, you know, valid stereotype.
Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit more about your family?
So my mom had studied to be a teacher, and so she homeschooled us for a while, and then was involved in a lot of different stuff, businesses and politics, things like that. They had an acute interest in politics. Both my parents did, and that's where we picked it up.
So they also were involved in politics?
Yes, very much, especially on the more on the consuming of the media side.
Oh, okay.
It's not like they were running for office or anything like that, but we received a steady diet of kind of conservative media. And so, you know, as a kid, I remember growing up hearing, you know, conservative talking points, you know, on radio programs and on TV and things like that. So I was always kind of habituated in that world, and that's where my values, you know, came from. Then as I went into college, I went to a Christian school. I went to Bob Jones University, which is right here next to the studio. And, you know, it's such a conservative Christian environment that I almost wanted to explore other things. So, you know, during that time, I was like more interested in alternative viewpoints like liberalism and, you know, now I want to say the Democrat Party, but I was very interested in those things. So I kind of explored those, probably more thought of myself as maybe a moderate at that point in time. And then when I got out of school, I went into law school, and it was like a complete flip. I went from a super conservative environment to a super liberal environment. And it was a liberal environment that was not tolerant of conservative viewpoints. It was aggressively against conservatism. And, you know, we would sit in constitutional law, and they would mock Roe v. Wade, or for Roe v. Wade, they would mock anyone who had an alternative opinion when we studied that, you know, case. Or just different classes. They would joke about people that were conservative. They can only see black and white, almost like they're intellectually inferior. Just things like that, that they're racist or homophobic or whatever, just for having different viewpoints. And that really swung me from more maybe middle of the road politically to hard right. It was like a reaction where I was like, oh, no, like this is thought control and thought pleasing. And I more saw the dangers of this kind of group think and, you know, speech silence that is very much alive on a lot of public colleges. And it's kind of insane, but it's very alive and very controlling in law schools, which you would think law schools, pushing the rule of law and, these foundational principles, but they really are, if you have a differing viewpoint, it's shot down, it's silenced, it's mocked, and then the other side is pushed even, like it's as if it's truth. And so it's kind of an ironic thing to run into in law schools. And I was at USC, South Carolina, which is supposedly a more conservative law school. So even in a supposedly more conservative law school, it was completely liberal. So I had a hard swing right and got involved in campaigns. Nikki Haley for governor was one of the early campaigns I worked on. Worked on a campaign for Senate, a campaign for superintendent of education in South Carolina, and very quickly got bit by the bug for politics. And I knew as soon as that first campaign that I was working on, I was like, one day I'm gonna probably run for something. Like I could do this. I could be a candidate. I could run. I thought it would be when I was much older. I did not expect it to be when I was in my 20s. So,
when did you start this term as a member of the House of Representatives?
Yeah, so my most recent term, I just got reelected to my third term in, what year is it? 2022, is that right? So I'm up for reelection next year. My first election, though, I was 27, I think, when I announced that I was going to run for office and for House of Representatives. So it's state house, so it's a state level government, and I represent the area here in the upstate of South Carolina. And I knew I wanted to run for office at some point, but as I was saying, I thought it would be when I was retiring or something. But my state house rep ran for Congress. Trey Gowdy had been our congressman, and he retired, and so my guy Dan Hamilton ran for his seat. And so I thought, hey, you know what? I thought I would run for something. I had gone from practicing law to running family business, that Majesty Music, which we talked about earlier. My father-in-law had dementia, and so they really needed somebody to take over the business. So they asked if my wife and I would do it. We were already a little involved, but so I switched from law and came and took over business. But I had this just desire I want to work. I want to use my law degree for something, because I had all this training. And so what better way to run and be a legislator and write laws, right? So it was open. I thought, hey, you know what? I'm going to do it. We had just had a new baby. So I'm 27, like new baby. And I tell my wife, and I'm running a company, and I tell my wife, hey, I'm going to spend every afternoon and evening knocking on, 4,000 doors. And she's like, you're going to what now?
Oh my God.
And she, we prayed about it, thought about it, talked about it for a long time. And we're like, hey, let's just do it. And so I did. And it was funny because you're not far from the age I was when I actually ran. Yeah. And I would knock on doors, and, most of the people that are voting are, older, let's just say. The active, unfortunately, the ones who care about the republic are older people. And so I'm knocking on these regular primary voters, and they open the door, and almost everyone is older. And they're sitting there looking at me kind of skeptically, and I'm like, I want to run and be your representative and write laws. And they're like, okay, how old are you? And I'm like, 27, trying to see.
Maybe they don't take you as seriously for your age.
For sure. They were, thankfully I had some gray hair, so it's not like everyone was asking, because I think a lot of people would look at me and be like, oh, he runs a business, he's a lawyer. Okay. Yeah. He must, but the ones that asked me and I tell them 27, I saw their eyes would get big, like, maybe we should go with somebody with a little more experience. Like, did you just graduate? Anyway, but enough people, I really talked to people, and they liked my message. They liked what I was saying. And, I had a lot of energy and enthusiasm and really a lot of fight in me. And I communicated that at the door. And so even though majority of people voting were much older than me, and the person that was running against me was their age, a lot of them were like, you know what, we'll give the young guy a try. And so they sent me, I got 60% of the vote. Shockingly, I didn't, part of me, I think I knew I was going to win, but part of me really wondered, like, am I really going to win this? And so then when I did, it was like, oh wow, now I'm going to be a legislator. Like, what is this going to look like? But anyway, it's been a fun ride.
Yeah. So what did you study exactly at the university? You studied law or political science?
I didn't know I was going to do law. In fact, I thought I was going to teach at college level. That's what I always had in my head that I would do. I love school. And so I wanted to get a doctorate, and I decided I was going to get a PhD, an MD, or a JD. And I thought I would I thought I was going to do medicine or teach at a college level. And so I took different classes in business and explored theology and what was the other one I switched to? Oh, and I took Gen Bio and some of the science courses in undergrad. And pretty quickly I would get into something and I'd be like, this is interesting, but I don't want to make that everything I do. I don't want to spend however many years in medicine. And math, I always enjoyed science and I always enjoyed history and English, things like that, literature. But math was never my interest. Like I could do it, but it was a lot of work. It was a lot more work and more effort than some people had to do for it.
Yeah.
And so I was just like, I was doing a little bit of the medical stuff, and I thought, what, even this is too much math. Like it's just not what I'm interested in doing.
Yeah.
Ironic though, because now as a lawmaker, a huge chunk of it is budget. But thankfully, that's math that is much easier. I enjoy that side of math. It's the getting into the obnoxious equations and
things. And I think it's more real world.
Yes, very much.
And when you're doing equations or everything, you think like, what is this going to do for my life?
Yeah, exactly. Like I'm literally not trying to launch a rocket. I don't or measure the circumference of something.
Yeah.
I really do not care. I'm so glad there are people that do.
Yeah.
It's just not me.
Yeah, but for every particular area there's a person. So that's
exactly.
Good. What do you do in your spare time?
In my spare time, so I like to read. I used to be a news junkie, so I would get the Wall Street Journal and the New Yorker and the Atlantic and and even more than that. It was too much stuff, like subscriptions. My wife would be like, "Did you get another one?" Sorry. And I like to read. I like to read nonfiction, I like to read nonfiction more, I think. But if I read fiction, I want it to be good. I don't like to risk my time, so I don't want to read a crappy book. That's just you know what I mean? And so I read when I read fiction, it's a classic. I literally go directly to. So I've read a ton of classics because I know it's good. It's worth my time. It has some kind of cultural significance.
Yeah,
it's got it can teach me something, impart some knowledge. And then I like to play golf. I hang out with my family a lot. Try to teach my kids. Recently, I've been trying to teach them soccer. That's going abysmally bad.
Really?
Yeah, it's terrible. My children have no skills. My daughter is actually in a league, and this is totally off topic of whatever we're talking about. But it was, she's such a performance-minded person. She's literally running around the field, and instead of kicking the ball, she keeps running by the stands waving, and I'm like, focus on the ball.
Yeah.
It's where did she get this desire to be performance?
So you also like soccer?
I played soccer, when I was in school. That's actually a good question. Do I like soccer?
Yeah,
I don't know if I do like soccer.
Because if you're trying to teach your kids, maybe it's because you like it.
Yeah. This is getting too personal. No, I think so. I do like soccer.
Okay.
But I don't love soccer. I don't watch soccer for fun.
Oh, okay.
And I know that's probably, I don't know, is it a big deal in Honduras? I'm just gonna say, yeah, of course it is. Yeah. And I was gonna say that's probably a cardinal sin, but I'm not interested in watching a soccer game, and I played it, but I didn't love it when I played it.
Yeah.
I didn't get a lot of satisfaction out of it. So now that you say that, that's an interesting question.
But you like or at least some things about soccer,
and it's fun.
The
I do enjoy
biggest players or some of the biggest players.
See,
if I mention Cristiano Ronaldo, for example.
Of course I mean
Messi.
That is. Yes, Messi. I actually got to see Messi in Barcelona. Yeah, we went to a game. Anyway, when we were over there.
Yeah.
But okay. Of course I'm gonna know that stuff. I thought you were gonna mention more local people, So
no, I mean,
because that's the thing. I don't really follow any teams. I don't. Anyway, all that to say, my interest in athletics is probably a lot of things. It's more what does it teach? What's the meaning behind it? What does it do for me and for my kids? And so I want them to be involved in athletics. And actually, this would be a great podcast episode. Log this away and you can do it with somebody else. But the importance that Aristotle placed on athletics, because I think I used to maybe downplay it more. I would have thought of it as a lesser and more the intellectual pursuits, reading, writing, arithmetic, all that kind of stuff, as being the main parts of the curriculum. But Aristotle actually argued, he had 4 major avenues or areas of education that we're supposed to study. Okay. That's like good for you to impart on your kids. And actually, what do you think they were? The 4?
I don't know.
Well, if you had to guess, Aristotle, one of the smartest guys that ever lived, maybe the smartest guy who ever lived, who like literally came up with the idea of biology and of, literary criticism and all sorts of insane things and philosophy. What would you think would be his 4 major things that you should teach your kids? 4 major areas. Values. Okay. Well, actually, now in virtue, that's a totally different. You went straight for his like main. Yeah. No, okay. So I'm thinking like, history and science, right? That's what I was thinking. Okay. Especially science, because he's like one of the categorizers or founders of science. Anyway, it was the rhetoric, which is more how you would categorize reading, writing, arithmetic, like speech, debate, writing, language, all that kind of stuff. Music, drawing, and by drawing it included both, I think, like spatial stuff, so it also could include geometric form, so maybe you could say there's some math and science in there, but it's like drawing also artistically, and gymnastics. And those were his 4, and I was confounded by that. I just had expected it to be all like major things that we study, but under the American system. And I'm assuming education is probably similar in Honduras. But to think that he would put all these things that we consider extracurriculars, like gymnastics and athletics, in as the 4 main groups, and it's like you want your kids to both, be developed mentally, which is in the rhetoric side, and communication, and then also in music and in drawing and in gymnastics. And he said, and this is why I think it's so interesting, that for somebody who doesn't fully develop their athleticism or even just their body, like there's an ideal human form that we could all reach. And it's like if you never strive to reach that, you'll never know what your ideal form is, like just in your athletically and physically. And that, I don't know, reading that changed my perspective of athletics. And now I'm like really pushing my kids, like, let's really be active, because there's something about like the idea of excellence, of human excellence, of, both with, I would have more focused on like the, intellectual side. Like I want you to get really great grades and really understand things and be able to communicate complicated ideas in a simple way and move people and persuade people. And that be your highest form. Maybe you'll be a doctor or a lawyer, whatever, my kids. But it's like, no, I want them to also do it like, yes, intellectually and socially and spiritually. And I had a spiritual upbringing, so I knew that one was important, but also artistically and even athletically. And like, because when you pursue excellence in one area, it kind of affects the others. So really, as people, we should be striving for the most excellent, virtuous, you could say, the good version of ourselves that you can. And so that's why I'm trying to help impart that in my children and be like, this is also something, because if you let one of those areas just completely fall apart and like not care at all, well, they're actually really important areas of life. So if you like don't care at all about, intellectual pursuits, you're going to be kind of dumb, like very limited in your understanding of the world. Or spiritual, if you completely ignore the spiritual pursuits, you're going to be a spiritually, empty person. Or athletics, if you just let it fall apart, you're going to not live as good a life as you could. And it's like, as you pursue this like model of excellence in all the areas, it makes you really a better functioning person.
So from all sports, you chose soccer.
Well, my wife actually chose soccer. Yeah, and that's what I was saying. I think that's why you stopped me, and I had to like I really deconstructed this or pulled this apart too much, because it was like you asked me the simple question of, do you like soccer? And I'm like, do I like soccer? Because I picked it for my kids. But technically it was my wife in a sense that picked it. She signed, so she likes my daughter Ella up soccer for a league. And it's also an easy one to get little kids. We tried. I actually bought my son golf clubs. I like golf. It's not nearly as athletically stimulating in a sense, or maybe there's not as much. Is that accurate? Somebody listening to this that plays golf is going to be so offended. But it doesn't have like the team element. and there's not as much of the fight, the aggression side of sports that is actually really important. That's another thing that I won't get into, but that's part of it. It's like because aggression is part of human nature, and you want to be able to use aggression, even though most people think of it as a negative, but it's really not a negative. It can be, but it's like you have to be able to use it in a way that's good, and that's one way to use aggression in a good pursuit. And really business or different things like that, it can be similar. You want to have aggression is not always bad. We don't want to teach kids to be wimpy, passive people. Anyway, golf doesn't seem to really fit that though, because it's not as aggressive. You're not like trying to
unless you use
slide
your
tackle
to push someone
to hit somebody, which would not be a good pursuit. But anyway, but I got my son golf clubs, and we played, and he's 3, so I mean very young to be playing anything like that. But he actually wasn't bad. He was getting where he could swing it and hit it, and then my 5-year-old daughter wanted to jump in, and she was terrible. And so it's like it's funny, like they definitely fall into some gender stereotypes where it's like my daughter is not as interested in sports as my son. Like if there's a ball, he's all over it, and I have to like coax her into it. But she's very artistic. Like, I mean, she can memorize she hears a song once and she can sing it and do this whole performance, and it's like whatever, different gifts. So anyway, they do have kind of natural and I have a third on the way, so it'll be interesting to see. It's a boy. It'll be interesting to see what his if he follows after one or the other, what his interest is going to be in. But anyway, so we're doing soccer now, and I've also done baseball with him. T-ball stuff, kind of idea, and we'll see which one. I had always wished that I played basketball earlier because I'm tall and could run. That was part of the reason I think soccer was easier for me, is because I could outrun people. But it's like I started too late. And of course you can, pick up on things, but I really think in a lot of different areas, you see this with certain linguistic skills and even some intellectual pursuits. And I think in some of the athletic pursuits, basketball is one that does require a lot of athleticism. And if you don't do it at all, and I really didn't, for whatever reason, I wasn't as interested in it. So by the time I tried, I was like going to jump into it in junior high and like start basketball. And I was like, clearly it was like, and I would get fouled out of every game because people hit me and I hit them back, and it didn't go well. So that was not my game.
And that's what I was thinking, because for example, with language, if you want to learn a language, the earlier in your life you learn it, for example, it will be easier to do it. But if you try to learn, I don't know, Japanese at 40 years old.
Or even 20 or 30 probably.
Right now I don't know if I will learn another language. By this age, but
now you got me feeling guilty. I need to teach my kids a foreign language too. Now, like, we're also trying to do music with them. Like my daughter's doing some like basic piano stuff. One of the things I do in my work life, I run a music school, Majesty Music Academy, teaches all the orchestral instruments. And so it's kind of ironic that my kids are like, they haven't really started lessons. My daughter, we're doing some basic piano, and I'm like, we need to get her on the violin and get my son on the trumpet. But anyway, it's just a lot. Parenting is a lot, because you have, it's like you have this little person, this little mind that you're trying to mold in all these different ways. And it's like this constant tension of, am I molding them spiritually in the right way? Am I talking about God enough? Am I teaching them, who He is, what we believe, why we do what we do? Athletically, my goodness, like, am I taking them out and teaching them and having these influences where they can kind of find what their interest is and develop these skills early enough? Intellectually, I'm sitting there last night going through the letters with my 3-year-old, and I'm like, want to pull my hair out. And we're like, what letter is this? And he's Z. No, it's not Z. You said that 10 times. It's T. It doesn't look anything like Z. Anyway, but it's like you only have so much time with them. And anyway, I guess that's life with us too. You're talking about learning things and doing things, like you have so much time to be doing something that's profitable. Anyway.
Did it feel scary for you when you had your first child, on how to mold?
Well, I wish I could say that right off the bat I was thinking that way and have been a very on point parent, but really I was so busy, and the kids start so little. It's like, no, I didn't think that until probably till my daughter started speaking at a higher level, I think. And, I did a lot of reading to her, so I did have that intent. Like, I pretty quickly got the idea of, point at all these different things on the book and like learn all the names for them and stuff like that. And then we did our letters. But no, I like now I wish that I would have been more on point. I think my third will be like the one that's like really great.
Yeah.
No, that's like you try out on the first couple, but and that was for me. I'm the third in my family, so that's why I turned out so great.
I'm the third
parents,
also.
Yeah, so our parents were just so they're pros by then.
Yeah.
But anyway, I feel like we've talked about doing homeschool for a little bit. We travel a lot for work and for because I have two jobs, politics, and then also running this company.
Yeah.
And it's we've thought about just trying a little bit because it would be easier with our travel schedules, and I feel like as long as I'm dedicated enough, I could do a good job with homeschooling. But anyway, it is kind of that constant. Oh, I'm sorry, I just just whacked the mic. I'm talking with my hands too much. That's what happens. I think as long as I can be dedicated enough and on point, make sure they get a good education, going. I want my kids to be like me when I go back into school. If I do homeschool, I don't want them to go in and be like, wow, they're really behind. I want to be like, oh, wow, they're really ahead. I'm like, oh, yeah, thanks.
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about your professional career now. You're 33 years old, but you have had a good path in your professional career. You have had a lot of experience. I read your Wikipedia page. So I did a little bit of research from that part, and it said that you are also a filmmaker. So
my Wikipedia says that?
Yeah, I don't know if that's true.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I almost said no, that's not true, but I guess it's probably talking about. So we did a film called Operation Arctic Viking Invasion, which is a Patch the Pirate. One of the main things that we do at Majesty Music, we publish a kids audio drama musical program. It's on a lot of Christian radio stations. It's been around since like '79, so it's a long-standing program. And we published that, and it's all audio based, but we decided to do one movie. So we had a big foray into animation, and that was interesting. And I was the producer on that, the executive producer, and was really involved. So I guess that's probably why that's on there. I was not aware that was on there. And so I do not think of myself or claim to be a filmmaker, but that's what it's talking about. And it was quite the project. It was like an hour-long film, all animated. But it took a program that I had written. I was the main writer of that story. It's a fun story. It kind of is a princess story, but it's like a Christian take on it. Like basically whether or not somebody should follow their heart, like whether that's like the best way to guide your life. And anyway, and it's also it's in the Patch the Pirate world. So it was fun, but I am not a filmmaker. And I didn't draw the drawings that they used for the animation was actually by an artist that does storybooks for us. And then the studio that did it, I can't remember the name, maybe Out of Order Studios or something like that. They did most of the animation. I was just the executive producer overall, and I directed the script and stuff like that. Okay.
Yeah, so you have to have modified that part of the Wikipedia. Probably.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, but I'm not very techy, so you'd have to show me how to, or I could try to have somebody fix that. Yeah, the main thing. So at Majesty, I run the business, and we travel a lot. I do a lot of speaking engagements. We do kids programs too. So we kind of have split. The Majesty stuff is like choral music, sacred music. There's a hymnal. We have books that we publish. We have devotionals, and then that's all the kind of more adult side, and sacred music recordings. And then we also have a whole kids side that's in the Patch the Pirate world. So I write the scripts for that. We do one a year. They're about an hour and a half, and they're actually very widely distributed and listened to. We have about 1 million streams a month on the program. So yeah, it's a good long-standing series. It's a lot of fun. We all play characters on it, but I write those and direct them, and then my wife and I and 2 other people write the music with us because they're musicals. Yeah, so that's kind of the other main thing that we do.
How did you start to getting involved in Majesty Music?
So I was actually I just finished law school, was practicing, and I was dating Megan, and we were getting more serious. Megan Hamilton at the time. Her family is who her dad is Patch the Pirate. He lost his eye to cancer when he was teaching music or something like that. And he lost his eye to cancer, started wearing a patch, and he already did the kids program at their church. So everybody started calling him Patch the Pirate. And he was already writing. He was a well-known songwriter already in his own right. And so they just did some stuff for kids. They were going to do an album for kids with silly kids songs or whatever. And in between the songs, he was like, hey, we should just have like a short little ahoy mates, I'm Patch the Pirate, and like next song we're gonna sing is about whatever, about trusting the Lord, or about not being fearful, or about doing your chores, whatever song it. And he was the Patch. He voiced the character, and then he had other funny ones. There's like oysters, and there was a whale and a seagull. His wife did a seagull, and it just took off. Like the recording came out, and people loved it because it was there were some funny lines and silly voices, and kids wanted to listen to it over and over again. And so that was really, after that first one, everybody was saying, hey, are you going to do another one? And so he really turned it into an actual story. It was more of a full plot, and more solidified the characters and what they were. And it just really took off. In fact, it's one of the largest children's religious broadcasts in the world.
Wow.
Still. And so, that's from 79 until now. So something that he never expected to do with losing an eye to cancer. And it turned out to be, one of his main life's work. And he actually just passed away. Ron Hamilton. That's my father-in-law. And so he had dementia for many years. So he was still writing. I had just graduated college or law school, and he asked my wife and I to help on one of the scripts. And so, actually it was right before I graduated, because I remember sitting in law school, the first one, he sent me the script. He wasn't happy with it. Somebody else had done a script for one of the stories. And so I grew up on Patch the Pirate. And it might not mean, were you familiar with it before?
No.
Okay. So if you grow up on Patch the Pirate, if anyone's listening, like you are like a Patch groupie. It's like Veggie Tales is like another, like in the Christian circles, like something that you grow up listening to. Or like if you're a big Disney fan, it would be similar to that. Like these are your characters. Like these. And so here's Patch the Pirate asking me to write a Patch the Pirate, something I grew up on. I was like, yes, of course I'll do that. Thank you very much. So I'm like sitting in property law class, like writing a script about talking elephants and stuff like that. And I was already like, I wonder if my life's going to be different than I thought it would be. And so we came, and he loved the script and said, why don't you direct the whole thing? And so we came in this studio actually, and they had it all set up, and it was production day, and it was an hour something long script with all these actors. I mean, just hilarious voice actors that they got to do all these different parts. And I directed it. And my wife directed it with me. And after that, he was so happy with it. He was like, hey, I want you to write the whole thing and direct the whole thing next year. And so it was right around that time in the second one that, they didn't know he had dementia, but they knew he was slowing down, and that they approached us and said, hey, look, this is a large ministry. We want to keep it going. We think that you two can do it. He's got business knowledge. You're both good at writing. She can write music. He wrote scripts and directed them. Like, is this something y'all possibly might want to take over? And we were like, it wasn't anything I thought I would ever do. But we said yes and started it, and like immediately, I mean, just a couple months into it, I was like, this is so much better than law. No, I'm just kidding. Well, I'm kind of kidding. It was very much a clear sign in my, I'm a Christian, so I have strong religious beliefs. I feel I very much took it to be a very clear sign from God that this is what he wanted me to do. Yeah. And I just so enjoyed it more than I did other things that I had done in my professional life. I had done sales, and I had practiced law. And anyway, and it's still one of the things that we enjoy doing most, because it has, and maybe I like to dig into the meaning of things. Maybe that's why I'm interested in the political and philosophical arena. Yeah. But there's meaning behind it. The Patch the Pirate kids programs, it's like teaching kids, going directly back to what we were talking about with Aristotle's different spheres of life. In the spiritual realm, it's like helping kids develop that at a very young age, like thinking about things that are much deeper than just, be good. It's like, okay, well, what is that? What does good mean? What are good values? What are, what is the answer and the meaning of life? And like getting kids at a young age to think about these type things and think about how to treat other people, and, what the grand scheme of what virtue and what is good in life. And anyway, we very clearly try to present in each one the gospel, so that kids at a very young age can kind of hear that and know who Jesus is, know the story of him, and who God is, things like that. And so it's very meaningful work that we really enjoy doing.
And how did you end up being the president of Majesty? It was around that time as well?
No, it was a couple years.
Okay.
So we were just coming on to help with the work. I was going to help do the business, help more do managing day-to-day stuff, and then we were going to do all the creative stuff. But they liked what we were doing. We started traveling a lot, became more the face of it, and it just became more clear, I think, to them that they wanted us to actually take it over and do more of it. So it was about, I think, 3 years into us working that they actually had me take over as president.
Okay.
So, and I've done that now since, I think that might be 2018, something like that.
And as president of Majesty Music, what is your vision for the organization, and how do you plan to achieve that vision?
Yeah, well, I try to be consistent, because it is it's a legacy business in some ways, or ministry. It's been around for a long time. My grandfather-in-law actually started it, so not even Ron. It was his father-in-law, Dr. Frank Garlock, and they were producing music for churches, like sacred choral music, and his goal was to create a resource that is helpful for families, for churches, for parents, whatever, and to have impact, on the world in those specific arenas, and all for the glory of God. And so we've kind of used that saying, I want to be consistent to the mission and still kind of focus on those. Like, our main goals are to be a blessing to churches and to families. And so everything, I want to kind of fall into one of those categories. Like, we do a lot of music still, and we do programs and things that directly relate to churches. And then we all, like with our choral music, and we still do Christmas cantatas and all sorts of things like that. We do kids programs that churches use, like for regular kids programs. And then also going right to the family and the individual with the patch apart audio recordings. And then we, like Shelly, my mother-in-law, Shelly Hamilton, she wrote a book called Always Only Good, which just came out last year, and it did very, very well. The whole book is about mental illness, and that's a huge, long story that I don't know if you want me to go into right now, but my wife's brother committed suicide a couple years ago, and it was a very big, it was public suicide. He jumped off a building downtown. Oh, wow. So it was very, and they were a family that's in the community that a lot of people know. A lot of, like I said, literally hundreds of thousands of people have grown up on the Patch Pirate stuff. So to have one of the kids do that was very much like, oh my word, what happened? What was going on? Yeah. And he was, I think, in his early 30s. And so she just wrote this book that it just is so transparent and so raw. It's just like told the whole story. Like, he took a medication when he was in college for acne, actually, that one of the potential side effects, which almost no one it happens to, but it can be, is to bring on a schizophrenia. And so that's what happened. He started exhibiting all these bizarre behaviors and just changed overnight, and like started getting worse and worse. And they didn't know anything about mental illness. They had like no real interaction with it, like so many families. I mean, that's very common. People, some people deny it, and they're like, oh, well, maybe it's just, something personal. Maybe you just need some kind of spiritual help. Maybe you just whatever. And it's like they realized pretty quick that he needed serious medical attention. So he went through this whole series of doctors and trying to find something, and he got to the point where he wasn't even functioning, and like was lying on in bed all day. Well, they finally got him on a medication, with a doctor. Everything seemed to be really good, and he was working. Everything seemed to be going well. And then he took himself off the medication, and nobody knew. He just stopped taking it. Or it was like acting like he took it. And so that's when he committed suicide. He was very much out of his mind and off his medication. And so all that to say, the main thing that Ron and Shelly are known for, literally their testimony, the thing that's made their ministry so big, was a song called Rejoice in the Lord that Ron wrote right after he lost his eye to cancer. So he loses his eye to cancer, and he says, wow, this trial, God's so good. And I can rejoice even through hard trials in life. And so that was what they were known as. Like, oh, they're the people about trials. And then for the next 20 years, they write all these kids programs that kids grow up with, and they hear them sing every night, and they're funny, and everybody loves them. Meanwhile, they're going through this awful trial of their son, like losing his mind, like doing bizarre, awful things, like with threats of suicide over and over again. I mean, just this miserable, in some ways, a miserable story. And yet through it all, they're like being joyful. They're being consistent. They're still like maintaining their faith. And so after he passed away, she literally writes this book, and it's like the continuation of the story. It's like, now I've gone through something way worse than losing your eye to cancer. Like, like really, like suddenly losing your eye to cancer seems like nothing. Like when your son dies this awful death, and it's suicide, and has a 15-year bout with this awful illness. And she just writes it. So you need to check out the book. If you've not read it, it's always only good. Yeah. It's like, there's just so many moments that hit you, going back to like the kind of the deeper point of things. It's like, life is hard, and life is difficult, and there are trials and miserable elements of it all around. And your faith, like what you, in a sense, how you get through it, is so important. And it's like, it's worth dealing with, and like understanding like what's going on and wrestling with it. And she says that I wrestled with my beliefs, because I've been always thought that, God exists, God is good, the Bible tells me that he's good. But it's like when you actually deal with awful, miserable things that are not good at all. Like there's nothing good about your kid, killing themselves and having a miserable illness. But it's like, I know that even through this, I'm going to maintain my faith that God is good. He didn't create the world like this. Sin came into the world through the fall, and that God is actually the one who's going to redeem this whole fallen earth with this plan, through his son. And that like he is so good that there's actually a plan that I can get through all this, and that there's a point to all of this, that it's not just that this world is all it is and I can just be miserable and it can, and my life can be meaningless. And it's like, no, that's not true. Like there is more. And my son, Jonathan was a believer and actually wrote music. And when he would have like the lucid intervals when he was, doing well. And it's like there's this hope for him, as somebody who trusted Christ as a savior and who was a believer, that they'll see him again, that only he'll be well. And that Ron, even after going back to like he had dementia. And so then after she goes through like the cancer stuff and then the loss of the son, then she has another 6-year bout where she's dealing with her husband who has dementia, who stops speaking and it gets bedridden, and she's like caring for him constantly. And it's like yet another trial, and still she's able to say, hey, God's good. Like, and I'm going to use this platform and, this ministry that God's given me and these circumstances, even though they're awful, to help other people and point them to God, to meaning, to things that matter, and ultimately lead them to a relationship with God and healing and things like that. So it's a really awesome story, but that's like the core of what we do. Our mission is to literally just share our stories and ministries to help encourage others, and most importantly, to share the truth that is in the Bible to help hurting families and churches. And we're, like I said, we're just a very on the nose Christian, very strong faith, and we believe that the Bible is truth. And so the more we can teach the Bible and its principles to families and kids and churches, the more the world will be a better place, the more it will impact those families for eternity and for good. And so that's really at the core of what we do and why we do it.
Wow, that's a big testimony of all those situations that maybe for another person or even myself, if I was going through all those situations, I don't know if I will have that faith as strong as they kept it through all the situations.
Yeah, me too. You wonder. Yeah, and Shelly actually at one point in the book, she says that it's like she was mad or angry with God, because it's like, you've got the wrong kid. Like, this is my son who's been a good kid forever. He served you. He wanted to be a pastor, and they wanted him to take over Majesty. They wanted him to be the next Patch the Pirate. And it's like, he enjoys doing it. He's going to do all these great things. We've served you. Like, we've done all these things, and yet you're forcing him to go through all this miserable, awful thing. But she said it was like that learning process of, what? Like, if God is who he said he is, and we know he's good, it's like, I trust him and I accept like the things that are in my life, and I praise him through them and know that he's got a point. The Bible says that he'll work it together for good, and that he is going back to that he is so good. He has a way to redeem all of this.
Yeah.
Like it's not like he didn't want the world to be in this fallen state, to have these kind of like illness and death and suicide and cancer and dementia and all those things that are just all around us, plaguing us. It's like those came about because of the devil and because of sin, and they're very real and they're very much a part of our lives. And it's like we can actually have hope through them and really become conquerors and triumph over them because of God, because he gave us a way to find redemption, which is ultimately, through his son, and finding peace with God and being able to have this hope of, of an eternal state where we are cleansed and we're healed. And anyway, and it's just, it's a very strong testimony, and it resonates with people, and it's very hope giving. and I think that's why, so many people will go to churches and she'll talk about this, and all these people will come up, and so many people in the world, but even in the church world, are experiencing this stuff. They have family that have these mental illnesses, but they don't, so often you don't want to talk about it because it's hard, and you're not sure what people are going to think. And so it's so good to have somebody, I think, that is so open about it, and just telling people, hey, look, like it's fine. Like it's not fine, but it's fine. Like it's an awful trial, but it's also fine to talk about, and it's a very real part of life. And like your kid having mental illness isn't your fault. It's like, but people treat it like that. It's like a something that you want to almost hide and keep people from knowing. And it's like, no, it's like just like love them and serve them just like you would anybody else, and like treat them, with dignity and like a normal person in a sense. And then also know that like there is a point to it, and that ultimately God can be glorified through it and has a plan in it.
Yeah. How old was he when everything happened?
Jonathan, I think he was in college. I think he was like a freshman in college or sophomore in college when he first had the onset. And he had it, I think, for 15 years.
For 15 years.
After that, yeah, and she details it very thoroughly in the book, and she also does a good job of kind of if you're walking through that with somebody, things that they learned, and that even ways of thinking about mental illness, like from a Christian's perspective for sure, but just like practical ways of dealing with it. And anyway, like I said, that there's hope through it regardless of what the circumstances, because she had almost the most awful version where literally you lose the person to suicide, but that's most people, that's not their story. It's different, but it's like even in the worst version, it's like there's hope and there's goodness, and God is still good, and there's still like a redeeming side of it. But she also, and one of the parts that in my mind is the most impactful, most meaningful is, she points out that, there's so many things on earth where maybe you go through a trial and you can point to and say, this is why God made me go through this, or I had to go through this. It was for this good thing that happened. Like Patch lost his eye to cancer, but this Patch the Pirate program started, and kids across the world love it, and it is so impactful. But there are absolutely things that on this side of eternity we'll never understand, like losing your son to suicide and mental illness. There's not really good that you're going to be able to point to, like, oh yeah, she's helping people deal with mental illness, and she's like, well, honestly, I would rather have my son. And it's like, that's a little jarring, but she's like, I know I want to be a help to people, but I would rather have my son. But it's like that on this side of eternity, you're not going to really know what the good is that come of it, or why, but you don't need to. Like that's like God is omniscient. He's all knowing. He's in control. And we aren't. We're pretty limited. What we know is the Bible tells us he's good, that he's got it, and our obligation is to love others, like love the world around us, and like love him, and that's going to change, and do the good for him, for his glory, here to change this world right now, and leave all some of the greater, grander details that you're not going to understand, and like leave those and just praise him that he's got it, and that's who he is. And it's such a strong testimony of faith, because I think it's so easy to cheapen faith
Mm-hmm.
as like, oh, faith is just something I believe. And it's almost like not as important as other things, but it's like, no. Like faith is like what can sustain you, like and maybe like as a Christian, it is what we exist for, is to walk in a relationship and know God and have faith in Him. And yes, you impact the world by doing those things, but like the real point of it is to worship God and have a relationship with this, almighty infinite being who is the reason you're created, who created you for a purpose and wants to have a relationship with you.
Yeah. With all these testimonies from Majesty, what is the overall impact that Majesty music has in the area or in the country or even in the world? What's its reach?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, there's like numbers I could throw out, but I think we'll have to wait to see in eternity what the actual impact is.
Yeah.
I hope that the impact is, that it's really impacting families, encouraging them to grow in faith and in their love for each other and in servant-mindedness toward other people, those around them. I know that it's, like I said, there's 1 million streams per month, and they're all over the world. Churches use the music all over the world. I think it's the third most syndicated children's radio program in the country, something like that. So like there is a big reach, and tons of churches use it, and all that's great. But I think if it's what we really want is for the program in that moment when kids are listening to it, I'm hoping that they hear Jesus in it, that they hear the gospel in it, that they hear about who God is and how to talk to Him, how to know Him, and that faith is germinating in their hearts, that they can come to that knowledge and literally live their lives for this much grander purpose that God designed. That's what I'm really hoping. And I know that we'll get letters and stuff that people say that are now adults that are like, hey, I listened to this and I got saved as a kid, or I got called to the mission field and went off to, somewhere and served as a missionary because I listened to, there's this one called Patch Apart Goes to the Jungle, and there's a missionary in it, and there's a kid's in the program, in the story, and at one point he sings a song, "Here am I, Lord, send me," and it's about that being willing to go. And anyway, so it's just funny to hear those experiences, but that's what I think our greatest hope would be, that it grows, builds the kingdom of God and has eternal impact.
Well, of course, Majesty is a big area in your life now, and it's a great project, I think, for all this mission that Majesty has for not only maybe the state or the country, for the world, because I mean it can reach all around the world. I think it also has a program in Spanish, right?
Yeah. So, although I'm trying to get, the music is in Spanish, but they actually don't have a full Patch Apart adventure in Spanish. Okay. I'm trying to work on that, because that's one of our largest audiences is actually in South America. Yeah. And so for the music, and so it's like they really need the story too, because that's the really fun part that connects with kids, is having a very a story that captures their imagination and imparts the truth in that way. And so hopefully coming soon, the Spanish version. But really, I'm working with some people to translate one, and then. But the thing is, you have to have translators to translate the script. Then you have to have the actors and a director to direct the actors to do all of that. In there, because I don't want the Spanish version to be the massively B version, like you know what I mean? Yeah. Like you have the English version is where all the good actors are, but I don't know, I can't direct it and don't know what's going on, so just kind of let them do like a talking crocodile or a hypochondriac elephant or something, whatever the story is there. I don't want their acting to be like this, very monotone and just not interesting at all. It's like, no, they need to be, or a goofy villain, like they need to have the same kind of acting ability. So it's just a little more difficult. And then also the singing. So I need singers, actors in Spanish. This is throw out there if you know anybody. Send them my way.
It's a big problem when you have to do these big projects and you don't even know where to start. Maybe that's difficult. But I also want to talk with you about your career as politician. So before we were talking a little bit about how you started and how everything worked out on your path to becoming a member of the House of Representatives. But Can you explain a little bit more on how that started? When you, if you had previous experience in politics before being a member of the House of Representatives too?
Yeah, I worked on campaigns, and I took legislation, which was a class in law school, and I did really well at it. I actually got the top grade, and that was when I knew. I already knew I was interested, but I thought, man, I think I could actually like write legislation and enjoy crafting it and debating it, and which is of course in the arena of being in the House or in the Senate. But I think that my first real foray into politics was I kind of became a campaign manager on a larger scale campaign. And it was through that, with seeing the fundraising side and the ground game and the candidate speeches and debate, all that kind of stuff, that got me more, got my teeth cut in it. And I knew then that I was like, I think I one day want to be the candidate. After I got into office, it was weird transitioning from candidate to actually being an elected official. And I have mostly enjoyed it. There was a time during COVID that I got so, what's the right word? Frustrated. That's partly the right word. It's like the world collectively lost their mind during COVID. And it's like you had every other call during that 2020, that year. It was like I'd have one person call me saying, the blood of the children is on your hand because you're not, because people are out at Lowe's right now and, buying stuff, and they should be home, and y'all aren't locking everybody down. And then the next call is, you are a bunch of fascist, totalitarian nut jobs. Yeah. I can't believe you're not out there protesting the governor, throwing stuff through the governor's mansion's windows. It's just like, you really collectively, it's like the country lost their mind, and I'm sure the world. And so that was not an enjoyable time to be in politics, but I learned a lot from it. I learned, politics, the fear plays so much into politics more than it should. You want to shine light and speak truth in the political arena, but there is this motivation of scaring people and having people freaked out in order to motivate them to do something. And I think that we should be moving away from that and moving towards more positive reforms. I am a big reformer in the House. In fact, I'm somewhat incendiary and inflammatory in the House. I'm the chair of the Freedom Caucus in South Carolina, so very conservative. Okay. I do not mince words when it comes to my viewpoints on special interest and their control in politics. Mm-hmm. And I don't mind bucking leadership and the system. In fact, I'm one of the people that more regularly does it. And I think we need more of that in politics. But I do think there's kind of over the last couple of years, you've gotten more and more of this kind of conspiracy theory and this, like I said, the fear mongering side of politics, which I do not appreciate. Like we got enough real problems to deal with than making up fake conspiracy ones. You know what I'm saying? Like the truth is bad enough. It's just be honest with the truth and have people focus on that. That'll motivate them enough to change it than as up ridiculous, conspiracies and trying to scare people.
What functions do you have as a member of the House of Representatives?
Well, as a public figure, you are people's mouthpiece into governance. We can draft legislation. We can speak on issues. We can go out and we have a pulpit that other people don't as community leaders. Obviously the most clear one is that you can write legislation, amend legislation that others people write, and you can vote up or down on legislation. And so, that I vote no a lot, to be quite frank with you. I generally I'm very conservative. My viewpoint of government is keep it as limited as possible. Like people generally can be good stewards of their own lives, but government is important for public safety and for certain core government functions, and those they should do exceedingly well. Have those very well funded. But we, especially in the U.S. in the last couple decades, have embraced more socialistic tendencies of the government getting involved in all sorts of areas that that are the private sector. And every time we do it very badly, like very badly. Like we try to play in the private sector. We try to control businesses or develop businesses and plan things, through government planning. And it's just always a fiasco. So I want to cut that back as much as possible, like less regulation, less control over people's individual, freedoms and daily lives, and just focus on the core government functions. That's like my main thing in the House is I vote against all the kind of excessive governmental expansions, and I'm always talking about core government functions. People get sick of hearing it, but somebody needs. The thing is, you have to have somebody fighting and speaking out on those issues, or else you just have this all-consuming behemoth or leviathan. Maybe that's a better political world, that's always growing and eating more and more of, like, whether it's states or local rights or individuals' rights.
Do you have any other political aspirations in the future? I
don't know. We'll see. Yeah, I'll go through cycles where I'm interested, like I'm ready to step out and take a break. Because, my family's at an age where it just seems like there's so much going on. And it's like, I don't want to be so busy that I'm missing these years that, you don't get back kind of idea. But then also it's like that natural progression of your career. If I want to have the most impact possible in my career, if politics is a career, quote unquote, for me, I want to be moving in a sense and having a greater influence if I believe that my viewpoints and my worldview has truth behind it, has the answers for a lot of the ills in society, and will make this country and this world a better place, then I want to expand that and have as big a platform as possible. And so I don't know. That's a long way to answer the question. Is I don't know. Would I run for something higher? Yes. What is the timeline on that? I don't know. And will I definitely? I don't know.
And you don't know. Also,
I might just help other people run and do that. You know what I mean? Like there's other ways.
And everything.
Yes, and there's other ways. Or being involved. If I step out next year, or 4 years from now, whatever, from politics, I'm still going to be very involved in politics. I just might not be a public official. And so anyway, what that looks like, who knows? So
you don't have anything like clear on what would your aspirations be if you wanted to do it, like
I'm not going to run for president.
For example,
you won't ever see an Adam Morgan for president. I can guarantee you that.
Why not?
I'm not interested in that at all. I used to think I would only ever run for state legislature, the House or Senate. Now I don't know about that. Congress. I think that you need more people that are willing to stand up to establishment forces, and that term gets used too much and used incorrectly, establishment. But you need independent thinkers who are there to speak out truth to power, and I think Congress needs that more than most places. And also, there's a positional, like in our area right now, I wish that some of the people were more aggressively supportive of things that they say they believe. In those higher offices, so effectively using the bully pulpit of some of those higher offices, I would definitely, that would be a big motivator for me to run if I was going to do it. I would be like, I'm going to get in there and I'm going to use that to effectively promote our values in a stronger way. But what does it mean? Does it mean Congress? That maybe. I don't know. Beyond that, I doubt that I'm interested in doing too much more than that. In the American system, it's like I'm already in the state legislature. And so from there, it's like state legislature to what? Congress, like House or Senate, and then what? Like cabinet presidents. Like I don't really want to do that. So I don't know.
Yeah. Can you discuss any legislative accomplishment that you have had during your terms?
So we've had a lot. One of the early ones, I got an amendment passed that prohibited members from profiting off of legislation that we pass. So, in the past we had an issue where people would, get certain projects for their area and then they would go get the contracts and make money off it. So they were like pushing, and it passed once, but then ironically it came back later and they actually pulled it out. And so some members complained they weren't going to be able to make money off of these projects. I thought that's kind of the point, guys. That's kind
Oh my God.
So that was kind of an ironic twist. But I was also one of the big people who was pushing for removing indoctrination in schools, political partisan indoctrination. Like I have strong political viewpoints, as you can tell, and religious views. And I don't pull punches with that stuff. But in the classroom, in a public classroom on the taxpayer dime, like I should not be in there. Everything I'm saying on this podcast on the taxpayer dime, like, inculcating that into other people's children, like against their value systems. Like, no, that's not okay. Like you need to be teaching an education that is non-biased and non-partisan. And we have too many instances where you have clear indoctrination in classrooms on the taxpayer dime in public schools. So we got that bill passed out of the House. That was a big win. Another one, it's more of a cultural issue, but I think it's a big deal for me that, we had a clinic in South Carolina that was operating on children, and, it was a pediatric transgender clinic, where they would bring in kids as young as 4 to discuss like gender changes and sex changes and things like that. And we're like, that's on the taxpayer dime. So it's like, not only is it already like, are you kidding? You're really going to do that? But you're going to use taxpayer money to do that kind of crazy stuff with 4 to 16-year-olds. And so we FOIA'd them and basically, and they ended up shutting down because they were like, oh yeah, we don't want to be caught, on the hook for paying for that kind of junk with taxpayer money. Anyway, so we've had different wins like that. I also have had a couple. I'm the chair of transportation in South Carolina, the transportation committee. And so I have some bills that I've sponsored or that I've steered out of my committee that have improved transportation in South Carolina, whether it's contracts being able to be extended to do more work and more efficiently and faster. And then the slower traffic move right law was a big one, which in the U.S., if you have 2 lanes and people are driving, the left lane is supposed to be the fast lane. So any American listeners are like, yes, the left lane is a fast lane. If you're slow, move over. Well, in South Carolina, they could just literally get over there and go super slow in the fast lane, and it clogs up traffic. It's actually dangerous because then people try to zoom around and pass on the left side or on the right side. And so that's when you have accidents that happen, when people are doing a lot of lane changes, especially at different speeds. And so we had passed a law that a lot of other states have where if you're driving slower, you have to move to the left lane so people can, I'm sorry, I keep saying it wrong, move to the right lane so people can pass in the left lane. Okay. So we got that passed through the committee. It was another big one that I worked on. And we got school choice options. Anyway, we've done and been able to do a lot. But what I think is the most effective thing I've done in my time in office is starting the Freedom Caucus. I was a founding member. We had 13 people initially, grew it to 20. And just having a group of people willing to stand up every day and fight and ask questions and actually debate things and make people think about why we're spending earmarks on certain projects, just bringing so much transparency and accountability to the legislature in South Carolina, which is the good old boy system. It's one of the worst, to be quite frank with you. If you compared it, it would be more like, anyway, we're just one of the worse when it comes to those areas. So we're really helping to change that. And so long after I'm out of politics, I hope that group continues to stand for those things and fight for that. And that'll probably be always one of the things that I'll look to and say that's one of the things that I am the most happy with and that I feel like accomplished the most in my time.
Can you share any advice for any person that wants to get more involved in politics or they want to start? Any advice that you can give them?
Yeah, I mean, the first is just show up. That's what people say all the time, but decisions are made by people who show up. And so I showed up and just worked on some campaigns, and one thing led to another, and I was running.
Yeah.
so if you have the interest, just work on campaigns, volunteer, and like anything, especially for younger people. So if you have any college age people listening, in general in life, like people will always ask the question, like, what's the secret to success? Like, how do I get a better job? How do I become a candidate? How do I, whatever. And I think it's so easy. It's like basic 101, like do good work. No, do great work. That's it.
Yeah.
Like whatever you're doing, wherever you are, like you show up at a campaign, volunteer and crush it. Like outwork all the other volunteers. That's what I did. I went and worked for a campaign, and like I really wanted to win the campaign and cared about it. And when other kids, because we were kids working on this campaign, they would go out and they would do door knocking, and they would maybe do like half of a list over a week, and then I'm like literally cranking out whole lists, like give me another neighborhood, and I'm doing signs. It was like I get obsessive with things. But I think in life, in different things that I've noticed, whether it was like in intellectual pursuits, academically, like I would get obsessed and do really well in school because I was just so fixated. I would carry around the flashcards and just all the time, like just memorizing things because I wanted the best grade possible, or I wanted to be the best campaigner possible when I was working on a campaign, or in politics, I want to do a good job. I want to be a good speaker. So I want to have like what to say and prepared speeches, things like I know, like have a reason and not just to fly by the seat of my pants and wing it. Like I want to actually do good work and be a good representative. And so anything you're doing, the more you do that, the more employers, the more, people on a campaign that are working you, watching you, they're going to then refer you to other things. And that's what happened with me. People would be like, hey, you should do this. You should work at this law firm. Oh, you should come work at Majesty. Oh, you did this great job directing. You did such a great job directing. I want you to take it over. It's like, okay. Or, you should work on a campaign. You should work for this person. You should run for office. Oh, here, let me help you. Oh, you're good at that. You should be the chairman of our caucus. It's like, oh, you should. Now I got people wanting me to run for other offices because they've seen the work that I've done at this office. And so there's no magic like, oh, read this book, or, oh, study this, major in this, marry this person, whatever. All those things can factor in. But like literally it's as simple as do great work where you are, and that will open up doors all over the place. Because people will know you as somebody who's competent, who does good work, and they're going to want you on their team or want you as their rep or whatever.
Well, that's great advice. You even inspired me.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Oh, good. Well, I hope so. Yeah. After all that time, because it's a long-winded answer. There's nothing good in there. You've really wasted some time in your life.
Well, that's great. So we're getting to the final part of the podcast today, and the last part is something that I like to do with all the guests. It's a short phrase or one-word answers on different questions. So there are a lot of questions. I'll start and you answer, like I'd say, with one-word question answer or a short phrase.
Okay.
So the first one is favorite color.
Green. I'm going to go so slowly. I overthink things. This is going to be bad. Green is my favorite color. Okay. But I also like blue, and it's actually blue-green is my actual favorite color.
Oh, really?
This is not a good thing for me to do, but keep going.
What is the first thing you do when you wake up in the morning?
Coffee. Yeah. I wish it were something deeper, like read or pray or kiss my wife. It's not. It's to go right to the coffee machine. So
yeah. Religion?
Christianity is what I should say, but Christian.
What is your favorite time of the year?
These questions. Fall. Fall. Is that right? I love Christmas. Christmas is so great that it's like I almost can't even put it up there because like of course it's Christmas. So then I want to think what's secondary. So probably fall. I'm a big gardener. I love, I got really into that a couple years ago, going back to, I keep bringing up Aristotle, but like, that, and some of the ancients believed that like, working in the soil and working in the ground is like one of the main things that we were meant to do. Like, like Garden of Eden, tending the garden kind of idea. Yeah. But it's like, there's such satisfaction in working and the patience and like the fruits of your labor. Anyway. So, because of that, I love spring too. Cause I like to, when I have time, I like to really like work on our garden and, like especially growing things you can eat, or I do a lot of flowers too. My wife likes flowers, but anyway, so maybe spring, maybe fall.
Okay. It depends, maybe.
You said one word, and that was so
no,
long.
That's fine.
I'm sorry.
That happens all the time.
I know. I'm so sorry. Let's just go with fall, maybe, but also spring.
Okay. What makes you angry?
I wanted to say injustice. You said the first word that came to your mind, right? I thought injustice, but goodness, that's such a loaded phrase as far as what exactly that means. Yeah. Anyway, what makes me angry? Yeah, that's probably what makes me angry.
What? How would you describe your personality?
Oh, one word?
Or a short phrase?
Or a short phrase?
Yeah, it can be like you can. I mean,
okay. Cicero The ancient Roman? No, you're like, no, I don't know. Like your face, like, no. I think that I have the same personality as Cicero, so I'm going to say Cicero. But anybody that doesn't know who that is, I don't know. I fluctuate between thinking that I'm really just like, there's nothing deeper to me than I just like to have fun, and so playful might be the answer. Mm-hmm. But then I also like I'm always like trying to find deeper meaning in things and like search to and can be very task oriented. So I think I fluctuate between like playful and obsessive.
Okay,
like with work. Like so it's like I don't know, one of those two words, or it's constantly fluctuating.
Okay, maybe this one will be difficult for you. Then, what will you buy if you receive a gift of $1 million?
What would I buy? I don't think I would buy anything. Do I have to buy something?
Or
okay. I was gonna say I would probably buy stocks or something. I like to.
Well, yeah,
I do like to invest. That's always been something that I enjoy. I don't know what I would spend immediately $1 million on. I would, if I was just given $1 million and I was told to go and spend it, I would probably spend it on several things, and I would divvy that up between some things for enjoyment, some things to have an impact on in some capacity, whether that's donating or something like that. I would probably use some of it to for a campaign. I probably would use some of it for a campaign. So there you go.
Do you have
I would buy an office. Wow, that sounds terrible. That's not true.
Do you have to spend a lot of money for your campaigns?
Not too much. So at the point that I'm at right now, you're going to get me going on something really long. I need to keep this really short. So right now I'm in an office where you're not spending a ton, but it could be anywhere from $5,000 to $100,000, depending upon, how contested your race is, something like that. My first race, I spent about $12,000, I think, or maybe $13,000. So now I raised money too, so it wasn't all self-funded. But the reason I joked about buying the offices in Congress, that's like it is a problem in American politics. It is actually something that you could say is a foundationally a corrosive thing, like something that could bring it all down. Is that so many of our elected officials at that level are buying the seats? Oh. So they are literally self-made, quote unquote, or inherited tons of money, and they walk in and they buy these offices, or they are completely funded by special interests. That's the only reason they're ever able to afford it, is because of all these big companies giving them money. So if I was given $1 million to like spend on whatever, that I'm thinking, then I could like literally beat somebody who's just bought the office with some stupid thing. But then it's kind of playing the same thing. My goal, like my dream, would be able to win one of the higher offices with as many private individual donors as possible, like people who are like, I'm going to give that guy $100 because I believe in the message and I think he's really going to take it to special interests. Like, I want for my constituents and the people that I represent to be the ones that I'm beholden to, not to these corporations and these interest groups who are not even in our state. Like they're federal, national, DC groups that are dumping money into these races. And so anyway. But it is kind of funny because, if somebody gave me $1 million and then I immediately spend it to buy the seat, it's kind of like, well, it's kind of the same problem. So maybe I shouldn't do that. Let's say I won't do that.
Let's just invest it on stock.
There you go. Let's just go back to that. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Buy some of my favorite companies, because that's something that I like to do. If I really like a company and I like what they're doing, I feel like buying a part of it to own it is it's a funny thing, because it like ties me more to it. And it's a smart way of investing in some ways, because if it's something that you like that really is bringing value to you, it's probably bringing value to other people. It means it should have longevity. But anyway, it's kind of a funny. I love the capitalist system is so interesting to me, and it's a funny way to just play a part into it, to just go and buy part of my favorite company and like see how much of it I can own, kind of idea. Anyway, so it's kind of weird, but I think it's enjoyable, and I really hope I get my kids into it, because it's a really good habit, because I could go out and buy things that are fun like I buy them and it's gone, or I can buy something that's fun, like, I really like, whatever, Chipotle, so I'm going to buy some Chipotle, whatever. And it's like, that brings me joy, and I'm making money off it, and I'm saving at the same time, rather than, I'm going to go, just buy whatever.
Yeah, or just keep the money static maybe, because I've been interested in getting more involved with the investing world. And for me, when I think about money, it's like if I invest the money, maybe it will be making more or not, at least not being static. Whereas where you have your money in your pocket or in your debit card, it's just there,
Yeah.
And
or you're spending it. No.
Yeah.
Then it's not there. But yeah, or if it's
and
just sitting there not making
it
anything.
loses the value
Yeah,
over
exactly.
time. So you,
especially the last couple of years with inflation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
so
Yeah,
you're
for sure.
having less money than
Yeah.
you had even some months ago, maybe, or the value at least.
Yeah, for sure.
So yeah, that's one thing that I want to get more involved on that, but I'm not really even sure how to start or where to look, because I know it's
The entry level, like the way to start investing is such a low threshold, though. You can start with not much. I mean, like with, thanks to things like Robinhood and random,
Yeah.
where you can literally just start putting, pennies on the dollar
Yeah.
into things, and you just kind of get in the habit of buying it, and it becomes like a fun thing. Like I said, I literally, I don't do it as much anymore, but I went through a stage where that was like my addiction in a sense.
Really?
It's like, not really, but you know what I mean? Like you have everybody has things that they really get enjoyment of and obsess over. I have friends that play video games for hours and hours, and that's what they do. Friends that watch soccer games. There you go. Like that's their thing. Their release that like gives them that dopamine hit.
But your enjoyment was to, hey, let's go to this app.
Yes,
$100.
and and I'm like, today I'm going to buy Lowe's. I would love me some Lowe's. I told you I like gardening, so it's like I want to own more Lowe's. It's like, and I really got into like Warren Buffett. I love listening to interesting people on YouTube and on podcasts, things like that. And so finding people, like my favorites are Warren Buffett, William Buckley. If you don't know who that is, you should check him out later. But they do, whether it's politics or business or whatever, and hearing somebody that has just interesting thoughts and ideas about different areas of life that kind of bring insight to it.
Yeah.
And anyway, and so I kind of got that listening to those guys. I got the idea of like this, you owning a portion of this business and like the good habit. And so anyway, I started doing it, and it's definitely became a type of addiction, or at least something that I really enjoyed spending my money on. And it's really, now I'm so glad that I did, because you end up saving a lot of money really fast.
Yeah.
Whereas if I was, just doing my other bad habits and wasting money, anyway, that's another area. The financial, as we talked about, was like spiritual and athletic, or athletic and intellectual.
Yeah. All right. Next question is morning person or afternoon person?
I'm neither.
Neither.
I'm a night person.
Oh,
Isn't that terrible? Yeah, and most people wouldn't.
Not really. I consider myself a night person.
Yeah,
as
night
well.
owl is what we call it here. It's weird because I enjoy mornings. Like I love the concept of the morning, but I think because I get like a second wind and a stride for work often in the evenings. And it's weird. Like I get that obsessed thing. It's like I start reading something, or I start doing a task, and I want to clear like all my emails, or I want to finish a script. It's something like that.
Yeah.
And or I want to exercise, and if I haven't been able to, I'm going to do it by the end of the day. And it's funny because there's different schools of thought there. One person, Jordan Peterson, who's a thought leader of sorts in the U.S. He I think it's him that is basically like, well, no matter what it is, you like cut it off and you go to bed by like whatever 10, whatever, just same time every night. I can't. It's like mentally, I'm like, no, like I've got to have accomplished enough in the day. You know what I mean? Like to do. So like if nothing else, I'm gonna go at least like walk to get my 10,000 steps and listen to an audiobook or like a Warren Buffett interview or something, and it keeps me up a little bit later. But I do, I enjoy my time in the evenings. So I'm gonna say neither. In the afternoons, does anybody love the afternoons? I don't understand that. I mean, I love the sun, but that's about like, no, the afternoons are like, what?
Yeah.
Like prime work time. Yay. I don't know. I mean, I guess if you really loved and were fulfilled by your work, I don't know. And maybe I should be, but maybe that says something about the work I'm doing. I don't know.
Yeah. Favorite music genre?
Oh my goodness. I love music. So I don't know if I can answer that. You'd be hard pressed to find music that anyway, I like music.
You listen
I like
from
melody,
all variety of music genres?
I do. I mean, I'm definitely selective in different ways. Like I don't think, just like with reading, like literature, there's junk. There is absolute junk out there that's wasteful or even harmful in a sense. And so I would avoid, or try to avoid those type things. But I love the sound and, music is the language of the emotions. My grandfather-in-law always said that he was he's a music theorist and a philosopher. He actually discussed a lot about the morality of music, because music is a language of music. It's a communication device, so therefore it has a moral nature to it. Anyway, that was Frank Garlock. But Aristotle, once again, he comes back up again. He had the quote that music is the language of the emotions. And I just so much identify with that. Like music moves your moods, and it can, anyway, it can be, it's like an experience. And so, to try to pick just one would be difficult. So,
yeah.
I think it would, because there's spiritual music, there's classical music that's a little more intellectual, then there's more folk or enjoyable, fun there's music for almost everything. Yeah. So it's anyway.
A job you dream to have when you were a child?
What was that?
A job you dreamed to have when you were a child?
Oh, I had a list. I had a running list. I'm not answering in one word. I'm so sorry.
No,
I'm blowing this up. Okay,
fine.
One word. Judge. I wanted to be a judge for the longest time, but then I changed it to a zookeeper. And I wanted
zookeeper? Yes.
I wanted. Okay, get this. I wanted to have a zoo called Adam's Eden, because I was like a little homeschool Christian kid. So it's I'm gonna have a zoo called Adam's Eden, where you come in and I run the zoo, and it's gonna be interactive and really cool. And I tell you, if I had a zoo, it'd be awesome. I believe.
Well, maybe it could be a project one day.
Yeah, one day. Anyway, so zookeeper, judge, pastor. I wanted to be, because I enjoy communicating, and so I always thought, I could enjoy doing that every week and helping people, counseling people, stuff like that. And then politician, and then a journalist. I wanted to be a journalist for a long time, so I had this running list of things I would cycle through. Wow. But it's kind of funny now. I think by being in politics, I do all of those things.
Yeah,
especially zookeeper. I'm constantly dealing with come on guys, get in line. Calm down. Let's So anyway, yeah. Oh, and I wanted to be a teacher. That was the other one.
Oh, okay.
And I feel like I do a lot of teaching. I don't sit in front of classrooms daily and talk about a specific subject matter, but I get invited to a lot of political events. I get invited to speak at a lot of different things, including for classrooms and stuff like that. And so I feel and then with Majesty, I do speaking engagements for this, and I teach at our music conference. And anyway, so I do a lot of teaching, and I just enjoy that kind of talking about something that's interesting, that's meaningful to people. And I love watching them get excited about something, because that is the magic of teaching is a teacher takes something, and it's that spark, the first way of learning something is you have to have an interest that. It arrests your attention to bring something, and it's like a shiny object that I'm shining in front of you, holding in front of you, and it's now I'm interested in what does this mean, and why does it matter, and that's, to me, teaching whatever it is, that's a really enjoyable experience. So anyway,
that's great. TV shows or movies?
Pass. I'm not a big.
You don't.
I do watch TV and movies, but
or maybe your favorite movie?
I don't know. I'm not a good. I watch movies for experiences. It was Memorial Day last Monday.
Yeah.
And so Memorial Day, I watch a war movie or two.
Oh, okay.
So I use movies as that. I want to experience something and put me in a mood or frame of reference or a mindset or something. My wife likes movies. She enjoys that art form a lot, and so I watch things because she'll have something on or ask me to watch something with her. And so I same thing. I'm not as adventurous because it's a time commitment. I'm did this win an Oscar, or is this critically acclaimed? And that's my first limit. So I'm if it's a movie night and she really wants to watch a movie, I'm why don't we look up old movies that did really well from the 80s that have stood the test of time? And she's no, I want to watch this other random thing.
Yeah.
So I don't know. There's certain series, and it's terrible, I can't think of a single one off the top of my head, but there's certain series that I've gotten into that we've binge watched that I thought were really interesting, some well-written dialogue and mysteries and stuff like that. And I so appreciate good writing.
Yeah.
But to say that I love one or the other, I don't really, and I don't put enough time into it to really act like I am that big into it.
Okay, and the last question is cats or dogs?
Dogs. Not
Do you have any?
Although, ironically, I've only ever had a cat.
Oh, really?
No, okay, that's not true. So when I was a kid, we had dogs.
Okay.
So I guess I always had dogs. But now that in my adult life, I've refused to get a pet because I don't want to take care of it because like we can barely take care of our children. How are we gonna add a pet into this mix?
Yeah.
But that's a joke. But I think that I had, because the garden thing, we had a cat that was like a street cat that like lived in like anyway, and it kept coming around my house. Well, I had this problem with voles, which are like a nasty, disgusting rodent that kills everything good.
Yeah.
And so that by having the cat in my yard, it would help take care of the rodent pest problem. So I like coaxed it in my yard and it would like chill with me while I worked. And so I was like, oh, I've come around. I used to hate cats, but like came around to cats. I don't want an inside cat and I don't want to actually take care of it. But now it's not around anymore. But I still say dogs. One day I'll get a dog when I have, when my kids are old enough to take care of it. There you go. That'll be my litmus test.
Okay. And the last is I always tell this to the guests and I give an opportunity for them to ask me any question they want. So if you want to ask me any question,
ask you any question. Oh, that's good. I want to go through the list with you. I'm like, no, like cats or dogs, or like where do you see yourself in 10 years?
Oh wow. You went right to the hardest.
I know, right?
Hardest question.
Well, because projecting your future is such a hard thing, and it'll be so funny for you to go back and listen to it in the future and see like what did I think that I was gonna do.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I would love for certain to work in something related to media, and maybe excel in that as much as I can. And I don't know. Honestly, I don't see myself living in my country, at least not for a period of time. I would like to live in other country, and I would love to live here, for example, in the U.S., at least for a period of my life, or if everything goes well, for a lot of time. So I don't know. Well, that was a hard question.
I know it is a hard. Well, now I have another question because you got.
Yeah.
So if your family is all in Honduras, right?
Yeah.
So what is that? Because I thought, in my deciding where to live back when I was studying law, a huge factor was, well, where's my community? Like, where's my family? Where's my community? So how, like what's your mind process with that? Like, because your family's all there, and that's where your community is, but you enjoy things here. Like, how do you think that's going to work in the long run?
Well, that's I've been thinking about that from time to time. It's hard as well, but I don't know. I kind of get used really fast to when I have to get used to my new environment, and that happened to me when I came for the first time to the U.S. and have to be very far from my family and from everyone. But I think I can get used really fast to that, and I can learn to have this experience of being like alone or by myself and everything. But maybe if my plan is to, I don't know, live here, for example, in the U.S., and all my family will be back in Honduras as well. In the case of my siblings, for example, I think it'll be probably easier to visit them and everything. In the case of my parents, I always have joked about this with my mom, for example, and I have tell her that if I come to live here to the U.S., I will bring her with me.
Yeah, she's gonna have to.
Yeah.
Is that primarily so she can like make your favorite food, or what's the? No. And you also want to see her, but right? There is that like how you get home cooking. Like, yeah, I got you. I track that totally. Yeah.
But that's my. I mean, maybe my vision of it. If something like coming here or living out of my country happens, I would love to bring them to both my parents wherever I go, because that way I can be closer to them and I can help them in anything they will maybe need help with.
So in a sense, it's building your own community.
Yeah.
Like wherever it is, you're just going to build your, and I guess it's kind of of course, but it is like a real thought, especially if they don't come, or if it's a long time till they come.
Yeah.
Like navigating that, and I've wondered about that as an immigrant, like, you know, that experience coming, because I studied abroad and I had some friends with me, but there were so many positives to it. Like I enjoy like the new experiences and the things that I loved about the culture, but you know, for a really long extended time, I could see like the loneliness and like that kind of like missing that community. But I guess you just have to build that community wherever you are.
Yeah, I think that's the best option that you have, because otherwise maybe you will get so disconnected from your original community, maybe that it will be harder maybe in the long term. So yeah.
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 Oh, cool.
Yeah. Okay. So thank you for being here with me today.
Yeah. Hey, thank you for having me on. Sorry, all of my answers were so long. I feel like I need
No,
a
it's
long,
fine.
drawn out goodbye because I went so long on some of the answers. But
I enjoyed everything. So any final words that you want to say?
Yeah, well, just thanks for having me on, and I hope this continues to go well with your media. Maybe this podcast, these podcasting things, as you build it and grow it, will be one of those. I keep thinking about doing a podcast, but it's the time commitment of thinking what to talk about that is relevant and interesting. You know, so you did a good job of just like asking questions in order to just try to get something that is interesting or worthwhile. But
yeah, so I appreciate everything, and I appreciate everyone that has listened to this episode of the CDRB Show. I'm Christian Rodriguez, and you can follow us and all of our productions on Instagram as CDRB Productions, and I'll see you next week. Thank you.